Thanks everyone for coming. Really appreciate you attending the breakout session today. Today we're going to walk you guys through the VR merchandising project that Qualcomm did in partnership with Accenture. And we have several topics. We also want to incentivize you guys to stay for the end of the presentation for two reasons. One, we're going to do a little teaser image of a new VR device coming to market, one of our OEM partners. And then maybe more importantly, we're going to be giving away 2 Oculus Go HMDs at the end of the session. So thanks again for coming. I wanted to, I don't ever presume that people know who Qualcomm is because we're a great technology company. We don't do a lot of heavy marketing. So I just have one sort of corporate pedigree slide. Qualcomm has been innovating for 30 years, creating new innovations, transforming the way the world connects, computes, and communicates. It started with back in 2G, about 1995. We created a new CDMA standard, which you may have heard about, called CDMA, really converting the world from analog to digital communications. That continued on with 3G and 4G. We connected these phones to the internet. We enabled mobile broadband. And now the mobile is the largest technology platform in human history. Between 2018 and 2022, there's going to be 8 billion phones shipped into the market. Continuing on now to today with 5G, we're leading again with 5G. Not only billions of people are going to be connected through 5G, but billions of devices, hundreds of billions of devices will be connected with each other through 5G. So we take all these innovations that we've scaled in mobile for the last 30 years, and we direct them now to new categories: automotive, smart city, smart home. Augmented reality, virtual reality is one of those new categories that we're investing in. This is a little bit of an eye chart, but I wanted to give you an idea of how Qualcomm goes to market and what we call the XR market. So anything AR or VR, which we just considered really 2 different points on the same immersive computing spectrum. You might hear Qualcomm, you might think, oh, that's the chipset company or the silicon only. Of course, we supply the chipsets and the hardware. We're able to leverage that huge investment we make on the mobile side and repurpose a lot of that silicon for the XR market. But we do so much more than that for our partners. We bring specialized software to those platforms as well. So whether it's the 6-stop head tracking, controllers, eye tracking algorithms, hand tracking algorithms, that software goes onto that hardware for our partners. We also provide reference design and SDKs and tools to our partners. So for the software ISVs, we're able to give them deep API level access to sort of the core IP blocks like CPU, GPU, so they can optimize their experiences on the Snapdragon platform. For our hardware partners, we also provide them reference design, but not just reference designs. We also integrate through our HMD accelerator program. We might find a new camera sensor or controllers or IMU, and we'll integrate that technology. We'll test it, we'll optimize it, we'll put it into our reference design hardware, and we'll send it out to our OEM partners. And that's really meant to do a few things. One, help them accelerate time to market for their device, lower risk in their development, as well as lower costs, so get them to market faster. And a lot of those devices you see on the right are devices that are powered by the Snapdragon platform. I just also want to say that welcome my partners in crime here on the stage. So Raffaella Camera, the global lead for innovation and strategy for XR at Accenture. And Tony Bevilacqua, who is CEO and founder of Cognitive3D, one of our technology partners for the project that we're going to be talking about today. One thing about Qualcomm is we know our role in the space. We're technology enablers. That means we're a few layers removed from either the consumers or the enterprise companies that are actually using these great devices. So we know we have to partner. And especially when we're building a new category and we're building a new ecosystem and we're highlighting and shining the light on new use cases in XR. So that led us to Accenture. And Accenture really did a great job pulling all the partners together for this project. And now I'd like to welcome Raffaella up to talk about Accenture and how they helped us with this project. And she is suffering from a broken toe, so she might take a little bit longer to get up here to the podium.
She's actually going to sit down. She's not going to get
you're
up.
going to sit.
If you guys don't mind, because I'm in a precarious position. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for making it here this afternoon. At Accenture, we fundamentally believe that XR is going to change the way that we work, we live, and we play. To the point that we have invested in starting a practice, the XR practice, and our goal is really to just apply an XR lens and find new solutions to problems that we might identify in different parts of the value chain of different industries. Generally speaking, you can see a map of where we're all at. Generally speaking, we recognize 4 main plays for XR in which we operate. The first is immersive learning. That could be anything from behavioral learning to more technical type of learning. The second is connected worker, so anything that has to do with either remote assist or any form of helping an employee while he's on the field or in a lab or somewhere and they need assistance or they need to do something. The third is what we define as an XR customer journey, so taking the typical digital journey of a consumer and extending it, so going from web to mobile AR to AR glasses, and then to VR, and applying that to different industries. And the last one, which is what we're going to be discussing today, is VR merchandising. So VR merchandising is the idea, generally speaking, of how do I maximize sales in a specific space, physical space? And the physical space could really be anything. Yes, of course, it can be a store, it could be a mall, but it could also be an airport, it could be the entry of a theater, it could be anything that is physical, and how do I maximize sales there? So we're going to take you through that and what we did for that and the pilot that we worked on with Qualcomm and Kellogg. But before doing that, just one more point. We strongly believe that the XR market is going to move and the solutions are going to be created successfully only if we work within the strategic ecosystem. So we work tightly with our partners, and Qualcomm and Cognitive3D being 2 of them, to really try to create not only the solution but the full architecture of the solution so that it can be taken and reused by multiple clients in an efficient way. So before I go into what it is, let's define for a second what merchandising is. To do that, I will take the example of a grocery store. Again, it could be different for different areas, but if you think about a grocery store, again, if merchandising is the art of maximizing the sales within that specific environment, obviously there have been tests that have been done for many years already to get to those results. And those tests include areas like new product placement. If I have a new product, where do I put it? Either within a category or within a specific shelf, so that I maximize sales and I don't cannibalize sales or reduce the possible cannibalization that could happen from that. The second is planogram or rationalization. So identifying what's the optimal category for the specific specific item, and also what's the optimal assortment. So how many of those items do I want to have and what type of packaging and all that kind of stuff. Pricing and promotion. If I change the price or if I add a promotion to a specific item or a group of items, how is that going to change or modify sales, and how do I test them within a store, within a real environment? Signage and advertising, again, or display, testing not only the message and the creative for that specific ad, but also where it's placed. Does that affect sales in a different way? Packaging. Testing different packaging, seeing if it's getting picked up more, that specific item, or if it gets picked up less, or depending on where you put it, how does that perform? The shopper decision tree, so again, how do shoppers purchase and what's the hierarchy through which they go through? Store flow. If I modify the flow of the store, maybe I place a category now in a different place, or maybe I make the aisles larger, or I put the cooler in a different place. Does that change sales, and how does that affect the total sales at the end of the day? And finally, qualitative research. So if I want to get some form of soft data that can help me figure out what I want to do. So the process and the way that the merchandising studies have been performed thus far, while it does work, it does have some challenges. The challenges are that, generally speaking, it's highly manual. Generally speaking, these tests, either you do them in store directly, or you create stores on purpose where you can bring testers, or you can bring your customers, and you can test different scenarios, or you have to do online surveys or in-home user tests. That obviously means that it becomes slow and expensive. If you're doing anything in a physical environment, real or just made up on purpose, you have to modify it, you have to change it, and you have to retest. It also means that you have to bring the participants to a specific location. So as you can imagine, if those are not very frequent, you have problems with cost of travel and all that. The depth and reach of the research can be limited. For one, it's difficult to reach testers that are geographically dispersed, so not close to the location where you are. And also, it's difficult to get and to gather behavioral data, unprompted behavioral data, that where did I look at or why did I perform that specific function, something that the user or the tester himself or herself might not know, might not have the answer to. Lastly, it can become difficult or challenging for example, CPG companies and retailers to come to the same conclusion when it comes to a merchandising conclusion. So if there is a way to share the data, to collaborate, or even to see the results at the same time together, that obviously helps come to the same conclusion and set that up. So the solution that we want to set in place is certainly one that is digitally enabled, that allows us to create, evaluate, and communicate those type of results in a more efficient, faster, and deeper way. So what we did is we created our VR merchandising offering, which, just like every offering that we create, is really the architecture of the solution. What I mean by that is that it's not just a project, but we look for the right tools, the right partners, the right hardware, and the right process to put together an entire offering and a solution that can be reused across multiple clients and across multiple industries. So in this specific case, what we did is we took a VR merchandising content platform, InContext Solution. We use that to be able to reuse 3D environments and 3D assets in a faster and more efficient way, so you don't have to go and recreate all the time. We use a specific eye tracking analytics platform, Cognitive3D, because we wanted to gather behavioral data at an eye tracking level. We also used we created a specific pipeline for 3D content creation so that it was efficient enough. And finally, we looked for the right hardware manufacturers. In this case, we partnered with Qualcomm, and we used the 845 with the embedded Tobii eye tracking to be able to have testers move freely in a mobile VR environment and still gather their data at a detail level. So what we did is we then applied the architecture to a specific case study for Kellogg's. Kellogg's is a client of ours. And the situation was this. They were launching a new product, Pop-Tarts Bites. And they needed to determine within their shelf specifically, so not within the entire store. So what we're going to be discussing is for a shelf. That does not mean that we cannot do the same thing for the entire store. But in this case, that's what it was about. They wanted to figure out, if I have a new product, Pop-Tarts Bites, where should I place it so that I can maximize sales, minimizing cannibalization. So what you see there is a representation of the shelf, which is exactly what their shelf looks like, including of the top row, which is where they have competitive products. What we did is, again, we used the Qualcomm reference headset. We recreated the environment in VR, and then we performed two tests. On one side, we performed the test that they had already done with traditional studies that had already given them a solution. And then we performed also another test, and we compared and contrasted. And really what we wanted to do, and we gathered behavioral data through eye tracking. There were three main things that we were trying to prove. The first, that the results of VR merchandising are highly correlated to those of traditional tests. Or in lame terms, that basically one is not completely different from the other. You can trust VR just as much as you trust following somebody in a store. The second is we wanted to prove that you could do these tests faster and cheaper in VR, which we were able to do, and for this specific pilot, we were able to do it in half the time and half the cost. And the third, we wanted to prove that we could get additional data through detailed eye tracking and eye tracking analytics that could give you a different result, which was the case for us because in the second scenario that we tested, we actually reached a total increase of brand sales of 18%. So if you don't mind, I'll show you kind of like a video, if I can play it, that kind of like summarizes what we did. Product placement and assortment in a store and on a shelf isn't just guesswork. Using scientific evidence to understand consumer buying behavior helps both brands and retailers maximize opportunity to drive sales. So we wanted to use technology, and specifically VR or virtual reality, to reinvent how brands gather consumer data and perform research, allowing them to do it faster, more affordably, and at larger scale. Kellogg's was launching a new product, Pop-Tarts Bites. They needed market data to determine placement, assortment, and the marketing strategy in store. Traditionally, this data would be gathered via online surveys or in-home user tests. And while these methods do provide valuable insights, we knew mobile VR and eye tracking could provide additional data with fewer logistical concerns.
Qualcomm partnered with Accenture to create a more effective solution for this kind of market research. By using our mobile VR platform, we're able to give researchers more flexibility in their testing, with the potential to deploy to a wider range of testers at lower costs, but most importantly, with greater functionality. The headset is powered by our latest and greatest flagship processor, the Snapdragon 845. It supports full room-scale positional tracking, but even more impactful for this project is the integration of the latest eye tracking software from our partner Tobii, giving us the ability to precisely track where the user is looking with a very high degree of accuracy.
We worked with InContext Solutions, a VR merchandising platform, and Cognitive3D, an eye tracking analytics platform, to create a virtual supermarket complete with aisles and store shelves and virtual products to fill the shelves.
Using a mobile VR solution, unencumbered by restrictive heavy cables, liberates the user to tour the virtual supermarket while the eye tracking technology is doing its job, giving us the new layer of valuable data about the shopper's attention and focus.
Studies have shown that shopping in virtual reality closely reflects real-world behaviors. With a virtual store, it's much easier to quickly alter variables like placement, assortment, or signage to test different configurations and then see how those changes impact purchasing outcomes. And when gathering data for Pop-Tarts Bites, we knew what the traditional methods had already shown, and that is that consumers expect to find new products higher up on a shelf.
So in our first testing scenario, we placed the product on a high shelf and added promotional signage and captured shoppers' eye movements as they looked at virtual shelves. We can see their eyes were drawn to the sign and nearby products. This even helped visibility of other brands placed above the Pop-Tarts Bites.
In our second scenario, we placed the product and sign on a lower shelf. And sure enough, again we observed users' eyes were drawn to the sign and the nearby products. But more importantly, we saw that the placement increased attention to the other surrounding Pop-Tarts products. So while we were able to confirm the high degree of correlation between the results of our VR tests and those from existing testing methods, eye tracking also provided us insights in consumer behavior that otherwise we would have missed. And that led us to a different merchandising conclusion: to place the Pop-Tarts Bites in a lower position, resulting in an increase of total brand sales of 18%.
So using state-of-the-art mobile VR hardware powered by Snapdragon and embedded eye tracking, we are able to generate more useful data and better insights,
resulting in improved speed, scale, and costs of market research for our CPG and retail clients. And so quickly, what we did, again, we recreated the store in VR, and we used a specific content platform and context solution to do that faster, because we already had that kind of like created. We only had to modify it some. And then we recreated the exact shelf with the exact positioning of all the products on it. And then from there, we tested the shopper's activity. We let them move freely through, that's why we specifically wanted to use a mobile VR headset to let them shop around and move around the way that they normally would. And
just to comment on the behavioral data that we gathered from the eye tracking, you can see a quick glance Oh yeah, you can maybe start to pull it up, but quick glance, the customer's able to get a very quick view of where customers looked, the correlation with purchase intention, because they can pick objects up off the shelf, turn them around in their hand, put them back, or put them in the basket for purchase. And I think Tony's going to give you a real-time demo of the platform here that shows some of the data we collected.
And it's much deeper what it will take you through than just a heat map. So it's not just where people looked and how long they looked at that for, but what actions were they performing while they were doing that, what were they doing before, and how that resulted in purchases.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Bevilacqua. I'm with Cognitive3D. So each user, each person that went through this scenario was wearing a 845 headset. It had the embedded eye tracking inside of it. It also had our SDK, the Cognitive3D SDK, embedded in the content that was created by InContext Solutions. And a part of that, ultimately what we get from the platform is a detailed 3D representation of exactly what the user did and how they engaged inside the virtual space. So the difference here from a traditional eye tracking based platform, we're not recording eye tracking on top of video. We're recording eye tracking within the 3D world. So that gives us the ability to map behavior to the specific objects, boxes, packaging, whatever it might be. So you can get those quantitative insights as opposed to just trying to figure that out after the fact. So ultimately what that gives us is this ability to see each individual user. But what's going on in the background is that we're collecting what each of those individuals did and the different products and items that they engaged with, which allows us to do things like click on a specific item, see the heat map available for that, and a number of different metrics as well. So how many times was this item looked at, for how long, what was the sequence of engagement, so the user looked at X, Y, and then Z, and how long did it take for the user to recognize this item within their field of view using the eye tracking technology. One step further with that, you can get into the ability to see all the different objects compared together. So you can build up a full representation of the entire inventory of products that you have, be able to sort that by gaze count, gaze time, navigate into a specific product, and get specific insights just on that item. And it also, sorry, now I'm lagging out here, but it also gives you the opportunity to then put those products into groups to be able to get group insights. So being able to see product sales by a particular shelf, product sales by a particular price point, or product sales by particular product traits. So we analyze things like show me product engagement by frosted Pop-Tarts versus unfrosted. So you get that ability to really dig in to what's going on within your data.
Great. Thanks, Tony.
Yep.
We back up.
Should come back up.
I'm glad the guys handle the
Okay, that's okay. I'll just speak to it. You can't see the slide, but I just wanted to mention that we showed a very specific use case for eye tracking in this case. Merchandising was just kind of very clear and obvious, but don't think of eye tracking as sort of a one-trick pony. It's more of like a multi-tool Swiss Army tool, right? So we use it a lot for things like foveated rendering, doing IPD adjustments on the hardware, very device improvement specific reasons for eye tracking. But there's other things like social avatar improvement, like having lifelike interactions between avatars for social engagement. You can also do like biometric authentication using eye tracking. So in enterprise especially, these devices might be behind the firewall. So using eye tracking to authenticate the device behind the firewall could be important. But I guess what I encourage is, in your business, think about ways you can integrate VR and think of eye tracking as a multi-purpose tool that you can use. And then there's plenty of help out there with Accenture and Cognitive to help you sort of fully realize what you can do with that behavioral data. The last thing is, not the last thing, almost the last thing, is if you want to find out more, Accenture did create a marketing POV. I'd encourage you to go Google it, VR merchandising Kellogg's or VR merchandising Accenture.
We do have free copies of it available at the back of the room. Yep. So there's a box of POVs.
Yeah, so grab one on your way out if you're interested. And unfortunately, the slide I wanted to show you of the picture of the Pico device is actually not up, but our partner Pico is going to be announcing a new VR HMD soon. I can't tell you about the specifications of it, but I can tell you that it will have eye tracking enabled. So if you're interested in VR, mobile VR, it's an all-in-one device using Snapdragon platform, and it does have eye tracking. You can actually go out to the Pico booth, and they'll tell you a little bit about it. And then it's okay, actually, it's not even the right deck that's loaded up, so I don't even have the picture of it. That's okay. And then if you didn't get a chance to drop your business card into the fishbowl for the chance to win an Oculus Go, Tao in the aisle there from Qualcomm, our XR marketing lead, is there. If you want to have a chance to win an Oculus Go, drop your card in if you haven't already, and then she's going to come up and we're going to let Raffaella draw the names for the winners.
You're going to keep the Amex, right?
Any questions in the meantime?
Yeah, any questions that we can answer while we...
The eye tracking, is that available in a smart glass form factor as well, or is it only in a VR headset?
Commercially today, it's right now only available in the VR headsets, but we are looking at it for AR glasses as well. So right now it's not commercially available, but we are looking at, for example, in our reference design implementation. So I would say coming in, and Toby is our partner. So coming into next year, I would say that there's going to be more information about eye tracking enabled AR glass hardware.
Raffaella from ExxonMobil. First of all, I thought it was fascinating about how scientific this whole experiment was. I realize that the details of the implementation. My question is, regarding the findings about shelf placement for the pop parts bites, is that like a transferable marketing finding that you can apply to other products now, or is it so specific to the colors and the fonts and that particular packaging where it would not transfer to another product?
I'm not sure I understand the question exactly. The shelf was set up specifically the way that it had to be set up and that it was in store. The products also, they're created in 3D, and as long as it's the same product, you can move it wherever you want, so you don't have to go and recreate it. Is that?
Well, I think I can answer that. So each planogram is going to produce a unique result in terms of what the users ultimately do and how they engage. Things such as package placement as well as package branding and labeling can all impact this, including things like signage. So I think it's very important that when you're introducing something new that you actually go through and do the test. To come up with kind of those rules of the road, you need to do a lot of tests that are very similar, and perhaps you could draw a correlation that if you use signage in a particular way, users are typically going to behave in a certain way.
Have you followed through with Kellogg to learn if what people do in VR is what they will do in real life?
So we are working with Kellogg's to actually implement this across a bunch of other categories and a bunch of other products. That's where I'm going to stop. Winners? Yeah? Okay, so the first one is Boston Scientific, Michael Alvarez. Oh, there you go.
All right. But you have to deploy XR in your enterprise, that's the rule.
And the second one is Paul Griffin.
Oh, that one might be big.
And we don't have any more, so I think that's it. All right.
Thanks everyone for coming, appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.